Welcome to EJH British Car. So we're going to do some more work on the Rover today. I've been noticing lately, if I'm sitting at a traffic light with light pressure on the brake pedal, that the brake pedal slowly creeps down, which is usually an indication that the seal on the piston in the master cylinder is getting worn. So I got a rebuild kit. They're not very expensive. This is a funny system that it's remote brake master cylinder with a vacuum booster on it. So there's a single line master cylinder at the firewall with a round white plastic valve that controls the vacuum to the servo. So it's kind of just odd. It's a single line system to the dual line master cylinder, slave master cylinder, that has the vacuum boost on it. Kind of goofy. I rebuilt the dual line slave cylinder a long time ago when I first got the car, and then I replaced the single line master cylinder that's at the firewall a few years ago when I found a replacement at Bewley at the Auto Jumble. So that gentleman said that it was, quote, rebuilt then. It was supposed to be new old stock that was on the shelf, and because they had been dusty and getting rusty, they cleaned them up and rebuilt them. But whether they put new seals in or not, and I think he said that they did, but it's kind of fast to wear out. But then again, if they're the old style seals, then I haven't been using Castrol Lima brake fluid, so it softens the seal. So that could be an issue with that too. So I don't know. Anyway, doesn't seem like it's going to be too hard a job to do, so let's get started. So of course this is a left-hand drive car, so everything's on the left-hand side of the car. Here's the remote cylinder, and it's a little tight for space here. Complicated by, I've got some linkage in here for the 4-barrel carburetor and all that. But we're going to need to disconnect these vacuum lines. This is the pressure line. The line behind is from the fluid reservoir, and there's a couple of bolts there. And I think this one, you can pull out the master cylinder without disconnecting it from the brake. Though some of them, when I looked at the owner's manual, it says a dual line system is supposed to be able to do that, but the other ones have a pin. So I'm thinking this will just pull out, but we'll see when we get there. So first we'll take off this boot. Just lifts off. Need to remove this clip right here. So this clip is actually a flat spring. It's about probably 2 full winds around. This one was broken already. But you just got to find the end, and then I've got this really tiny messed up screwdriver. I could just get underneath the end, and then you peel it out. Once that's removed, you take out this spring in this cup. I like to lay this stuff out in the order that it came apart, so I can put it back together again in the same order if I get confused. So that's the circlip that was inboard. Just used a pair of circlip removers. It's fiddly, but we got it out. I expect what happens is that there's some sort of plastic or nylon collar down here. Just cleaning all the goop out. And I expect that I just need to pull on this hard enough to get that moving. There you can see it's that sort of white-green tinged area. Right there. Nope, it does not. Well, that's stuck. It says it's supposed to, withdraw the assembly. So I'm going to take off this assembly. So I've got to take this plastic plate off. It's got 6 Phillips head screws. And then that should give me access to the 2 bolts that hold the bell assembly onto the end here. And I'm hoping if I get the piston out, I might be able to put something down through the cylinder to push, but I don't know. We've got a repair manual. It's got a diagram of this, but it's pretty small when it comes to details, so I'm not sure how well it's going to work. So here's the plastic piece. and the rubber diaphragm. And then here are the two bolts that I need to take out to get that out of there. So there's the little piston for the air servo, was into the end of the cylinder. As you can see, it's got a cup seal here, and then it's got an O-ring there. And to get it out of the cylinder, I put my finger over the feed for the brake line and pushed the cylinder up, and the air pressure pushed it out quite readily. So that was easy for a change. Now it says there's some kind of a lever on the inside, so that doesn't look like I'm going to be able to access that. Well, I think it says I should take these off as well, so we'll go ahead and get those off. So this is a blind hole puller. Harbor Freight item 95987. It's really for pulling sleeve bearings out of a hole, but because the bore of this is smooth, but it's gripping enough that that plastic ring is coming up, and it's coming up out of the bore too. It'll be a race to see which comes out first. Well, we have success. When I got down and looked, whatever this gold coating is here, they coated the first 1/4 inch or more of the bore. And I have this. I bought this as a knife sharpener. It's a piece of carbide, just on a thing. I bought this at my local bearing shop. On a really handy place. I was walking with any bearing and they match it up. But it is sharp enough and thin enough that it fit between the bore and the cylinder stem and scraped it very, very nicely. And once I did that, you can see it's up about halfway. It came out pretty easy. And there's the whole thing. Look at that. Bits of rubber debris in here. There's a big strike, like a cut out of this O-ring, and this O-ring is dry as a bone. So I'm going to say when they assembled this, they didn't lube it up. And that piece of rubber I found was down here. So it's managed to work its way down. And that could have been what the problem was. If that piece of rubber was laying across this lip seal, then there'd be a little gap on either side. I mean, that piece of rubber is probably 5/1000 thick. It's not very much, but just enough to let it seep. But yeah. I mean, this is getting wet now because my fingers are oily. But they definitely assembled this dry. Yeah, they didn't lube the shaft either. So, well, there's a cup seal here that's sealing the shaft to the inside of this plastic cup, and then the plastic cup is sealed to the outside with that O-ring. So we definitely need to replace that. And the rebuild kit should have this, and it should have those little cups and stuff off of the other plate. So let me go find that, and then we'll put this together. So this is the lever that actuates the vacuum for the brakes. So this goes in first, and it drops down the hole, and of course it landed upside down. I don't know how well you can see that, but that little lever goes in, and the tang faces down, and that's because that's what engages the pin from the end unit here. After that goes this washer, and it's got a recess for that spring, so drop that down the hole, and no doubt that will turn over too. Of course it did. I don't know why I don't just drop them in upside down to start with. So put it in with that magnet, and then we'll use a screwdriver to separate it out. By the way, I honed all these these bores before I did all this. Here's the spring and that little cup. That goes in. And then we need to replace the seals on this. So this is the main seal. Don't forget that there's this brass shim behind it. It has to do with this. These got ports back here, and that's to let fluid get past and lubricate the bore so it doesn't hang up. And you want to make sure you use plenty of brake fluid when you're reassembling this. I usually put a little bit into the cap of the bottle, and that way I can dip my parts. And then I usually use a small screwdriver. Get underneath it so you can lift it over that edge and then just work it over gently. And we'll make sure the cups are facing in the right direction. So this is going to push fluid this way so that cup is facing safe that way. Need to replace these seals here. And make sure you pay attention to which way all these things face. So this cup washer is facing out, and then of course the O-ring is symmetrical, so it doesn't matter. So that was interesting. When I took this old one out, it fell out of here. It was loose, and this one's just snug. So that may have been part of the issue as well. So I'm trying to keep everything as clean as I can because my fingers aren't very clean either. But, you know, you do what you can. So I've been lubricating everything up. So everything in the bore I've been lubricating with brake fluid. But this O-ring I'm using red rubber grease, which is designed for that type of thing. So that's in there. So what I want to do, I want to get the seal into the bore. So I'll make sure it's really super well lubricated up because there's a slight chamfer down there, but I really just don't want to damage this edge. That's the most critical seal in this whole thing. By doing that separately, I can wiggle that a little bit to work it down. Then goes the washer portion of this, and then the cup part. And it's still a pretty snug fit. And it seems to be that washer that's really tight. I think I'm going to relieve that just a little bit, so I don't think it should be quite that tight. Alright, so I relieved that inner washer, and it had a couple of thousandths smaller than the bore, so that went in. And then of course the bigger one with the O-ring, it went down to the O-ring touched, and then I used just a drift and this, and very, very lightly just tapped it, worked it around, and it seems to have gone okay. And there's the important thing, that thing is sliding back and forth just on the inner return spring, so that's good. So now we need to put that circlip back in. There we go. That's gone in well. And then this large spring, and this bit, and this funny washer thing. I was hoping they'd give me a new one in the rebuild kit, but they didn't. I think they call it a Spyrex washer. Oh, I suppose you could use a snap ring in here. But that seems to have held it. So that's that end together. Now we get the little air valve plunger. So to replace this little cup and that little O-ring, same as the bigger one, only tighter and smaller and more fiddly. So I'm going to go do that. So, cup goes towards the pin, which goes down. Put a little brake fluid on the cup and a little red lube on the O-ring, and that just slides right in there, just like that. Then we have a new gasket for the end. And then we'll put this plate back on. Only fits one way because of that port for the vacuum. And these have star washers for lock washers. I'm not quite sure why, but this one was really snug all the way out. It's going back in a lot better, so maybe it just had some Loctite on it or something. Oh, I didn't see any. But and these want to be, 5 foot-pounds or so, maybe 10. Just a little rubber grease, not going to do any harm. It'll help to keep the rubber from deteriorating from being in contact with the metal. Pin down. I don't think that there's any particular orientation other than it's centered on the bits. This goes with the port facing down that way. This is assembling the check valve, so there's that steel washer goes in the bottom, and then the spring with the plastic piece, and then this, and it's got a copper washer on it. You want to make sure that's there and it's clean. Again, it would have been nice if they supplied one in the rebuild kit, but they did not, so we're making do with what we got. Make sure everything's nice and clean here. And that goes in. I'd also like to mention that the correct torque for this is not a quarter turn past broken. Probably 20 foot-pounds is plenty. Just enough to get the washer seated in. And then we have the rear piece. I don't see a washer on this one, but there should be. Well, I found the washer. It was on the bench just underneath one of the cleaning rags. So we'll put that in there, and on it goes there. And again, just because it's a 15/16 inch wrench doesn't mean you have to put the 80 foot-pounds. Just enough to seat the copper. And that should be it. Just smear quite a bit of extra red grease into the hole before I put the spring in, just to keep it in good shape with the elements and all that. There we go. Hopefully it's good or better than new. The thing I don't like is this end cap has got a little crack in it. That's for the filter. But it seems to be holding up all right. So I just wanted to note, it back in the car. When you go to put this back together, I know it's a little dark in here. There's the pin that drives the cylinder from the brake pedal. You want to make sure that that gets centered into your boost nut, into your dust boot. And you also notice the dust boot has a hole that goes on the bottom, so if anything, the seals leak on the inside, it goes outside and onto the ground. Or it's supposed to go outside back into the side of the car, but at least it'll leak out so you notice it before it fills up. And then it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to put that in, the 2 bolts, the vacuum lines, the pressure lines, and then, because I've just got the reservoir clamped off, I'll just turn it back on. And I'll hook that up before I tighten the pressure line all the way so it can gravity bleed. Well, there it is, all back in position. It was kind of funny. I got the first couple of threads started with this and then put everything back together, and this was just bubble, 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 bubble. And then it stopped bubbling and it was bled. And I just went in and tried it out and it feels like it's good. So I think we're all in one piece. The vacuum lines are hooked up, topped up the cylinder. Brakes seem to work. Well, I think that's about it. Going to take it for a drive, put a little bit of gas on it because I'm on reserve. To get it started, it ran that low, just messing around with it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and join, and we'll see you next time.